Why we are returning to the moon, a guide to the Artemis missions. It has been more than half a century since humans last set foot on the moon, but we are now on the verge of doing it once again. NASA's ambitious Artemis program aims to build the first space station around the moon, so that we can study it in ways never before possible. It will also serve as a stepping stone for future exploration of Mars. The famous words of Neil Armstrong, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," were broadcast around the world in July 1969. They marked a historic moment when he became the first human to walk on the moon. NASA's Apollo program successfully achieved the mission of landing humans on the lunar surface. It also sparked enormous enthusiasm for space exploration and inspired an entire generation to pursue science. Today, NASA hopes to inspire the next generation with its new lunar exploration program called Artemis program. The program is named after Artemis, the Greek goddess of hunting, wilderness, and the moon. In Greek mythology, Artemis is the twin sister of Apollo, but this latest program is far from a copy of its predecessor. The project will open a new chapter by building the first space station in lunar orbit. This will allow long-term scientific research on the moon and mark an important step towards sending humans to Mars in the future. It will also see the first woman and the first person of color land on the moon. Professor Sarah Russell, a planetary scientist, shared her thoughts about the program. "I'm really excited about the upcoming Artemis missions, along with all the fascinating new things we will learn about the moon. I'm also looking forward to seeing how people react. I remember the excitement after the Apollo missions. People were amazed that humans had actually set foot on the moon. And even now, it still feels incredible when we think about it. The first moon landings, the United States launched the Apollo program in the 1960s, with the goal of becoming the first nation to land humans on the moon and return them safely to Earth. A major motivation was winning the space race against the Soviet Union. However, these missions also greatly expanded our understanding of Earth's closest celestial neighbor. In total, 6 missions successfully landed on the moon, beginning with Apollo 11 in 1969 and ending with Apollo 17 in December 1972. Together, these missions brought back an impressive 382 kilograms of lunar material to Earth. Many countries around the world received samples as a gesture of goodwill from the United States. Even today, scientists continue to learn from these materials more than 50 years later. The samples changed our understanding of the moon and the solar system. Sada explains, "We learned a great deal about the types of rocks found on the moon and about the presence of water. Because these rocks are extremely ancient, they also help us understand how the moon formed, and we are still discovering new insights from them today." Why are we returning to the moon? Although the Apollo missions provided a wealth of knowledge, there is still much we can learn from the moon. In fact, it may reveal a great deal about the early history of Earth itself. On Earth, erosion occurs very quickly due to weather systems. This makes it rare to find rocks dating back to the earliest days of the solar system. On the moon, however, erosion is minimal. Lunar rocks can be up to 4.5 billion years old, forming a kind of time capsule that records the formation of both the moon and Earth. If you want to understand early Earth, the moon is a great place to look, Sarah explained, because the Earth and moon are so close to each other. Events that occurred on the moon likely also happened on Earth. But due to Earth's extensive erosion, much of that evidence has been lost. The moon can therefore tell us a great deal about our planet's early story. The Apollo missions explored only a few regions near the equator on the near side of the moon. We still know very little about the far side and the polar regions, so there is still much to discover. Where will Artemis astronauts land? The Artemis program will explore the moon's south pole for the first time. The South Pole is much colder, increasing the chances of finding frozen water. The region is also close to the South Polacan Basin, which at about 2,500 kilometers in diameter is the largest known impact crater in the solar system. This massive crater cuts deep through the moon's crust and reaches down toward the mantle. Because of its depth, the basin exposes multiple layers of rock, creating a perfect timeline of how the moon formed and evolved over time. Artemis I, an uncrewed test flight. The first mission. Artemis I, launched in November 2022. Its goal was to test critical systems, including the Orion spacecraft, which will carry astronauts to and from lunar orbit. Orion is NASA's next-generation spacecraft, designed for deep space missions. It can carry 4 astronauts, slightly more than the 3-person capacity of the Apollo command module. When Artemis I launched, the spacecraft carried 3 mannequins. One wore a special vest equipped with sensors to measure solar radiation exposure, one of the biggest risks astronauts face during deep space travel. The Orion spacecraft was launched atop the Space Launch System SLS, the most powerful rocket in the world. The mission was a success. The uncrewed spacecraft returned safely to Earth in December 2022 after a close flyby of the Moon, traveling about 2.3 million kilometers during its 25-day mission. Artemis II. A crewed flight around the Moon. The next mission, Artemis II, is scheduled to launch in March 2026 and will be the first crewed test flight of Orion. During the 10-day mission, the crew will evaluate spacecraft systems and practice emergency procedures. Astronauts will launch aboard the Space Launch System and orbit Earth twice to confirm that Orion operates as expected. This includes testing, navigation, communications, and life support systems that produce breathable air. Afterward, the spacecraft will begin its journey toward the Moon, traveling about 7,500 kilometers beyond the far side before naturally returning to Earth. Under the pull of gravity, Artemis III. Landing on the Moon. If Artemis II is successful, Artemis III will make history by sending astronauts to explore the Moon's south pole. 4 astronauts will travel aboard Orion into lunar orbit. This time, however, the spacecraft will dock with the human landing system based on SpaceX Starship. Starship will then carry 2 astronauts from orbit down to the lunar surface. After landing, they will spend about a week exploring the Moon and conducting scientific work. During moonwalks, the crew will collect samples, study geology, and capture photos and video. Once their work is complete, they will return aboard Starship to rejoin the rest of the crew in Orion. After transferring samples and equipment, they will begin their journey back to Earth. The entire mission is expected to last about 30 days and is currently planned for 2027. Artemis IV. Building a lunar space station. The next phase of the program is even more ambitious. It involves building the first lunar space station, called Lunar Gateway, like the International Space Station that orbits Earth. Gateway will orbit the Moon. It will carry scientific instruments to study many things, including the sun and human health in space. It will also provide docking ports for visiting spacecraft and living quarters where astronauts can work and prepare for missions to the lunar surface. Modules for the station are currently being built and will be launched using the Falcon Heavy rocket developed by SpaceX. Once Gateway is assembled, the Artemis IV crew will launch from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida aboard an upgraded SLS rocket. They will bring additional cargo and new modules that expand the station's living space and life support systems. 2 astronauts will later travel down to the lunar surface aboard Starship to perform moon collect samples, deploy instruments, and conduct geological surveys. After completing the experiments, the entire crew will return to Earth aboard Orion, leaving Gateway in lunar orbit. The future of space exploration. Building a new lunar space station will be a major milestone, but it is not the end of the mission. There are plans for a long-term human presence on the Moon, opening the door to deeper exploration of our solar system and possibly serving as a launch point for missions to Mars. Although Mars is not currently ideal for life, scientists believe it may once have supported it. So far, everything we know about the Red Planet has come from robotic landers and rovers. Having astronauts on the surface, collecting samples and performing experiments would likely lead to many groundbreaking discoveries. A permanent human presence around the Moon would be a huge step toward one day sending people to Mars, Sarah says. Because the Moon's gravity is much weaker than Earth's, launching rockets from its surface would be easier and more costly. Long-term research on the Moon will also help us learn how to live and work on another world, preparing humanity for future deep space exploration. It is exciting to imagine the possibilities these missions will create and the new horizons that the next generation of scientists will explore. The first moon landing inspired many children, including me, to pursue science. Programs like this can have a huge impact on popular culture, and hopefully that will happen again.